Okay, so this is the third video in this series, and if you remember from the first two videos, the problem when you have a comparative advantage is that you're always, in this case it's televisions, you're always going to have one of those goods in which the number produced when you specialize is going to be lower. And so you can work through those numbers, but I'm going to show you a better way in this video, and that is by using a diagrammatic approach. So the diagrammatic approach to this is to draw the two PPFs on the same diagram. So remember, we started with this table where Britain can have 8 televisions with all of its factors up here in production of televisions and 32 washing machines down here. And I'd always recommend that the bottom axis is the one that you're going to have the bigger numbers on. Okay, it's going to be easier later on. Okay. So what you then do is you can say, well, as we did before, if you don't specialize, you're going to end up with part specialization in both, as it were. In America, they're going to produce 2 or 4. Britain's going to produce 4 TVs, 16 washing machines, and you end up with 6 and 20. And in the next slide, see that if they did specialize, then America is going to specialize in televisions. Remember, it's got its opportunity cost in televisions. Britain's going to specialize in washing machines. Remember, it's got its opportunity cost in washing machines. And you end up with 4 and 32. But the problem was, I'll bring in, that was the one where you don't specialize. And we had 6 televisions and 20 washing machines. So we are 2 televisions down when we specialize, and that's the problem. So this is the easier way of doing it. What we say and what we need to show in your analysis is that the opportunity cost ratios, which we've already worked through, in America, the 4 televisions is going to cost them the 8 washing machines, so 1 TV is an opportunity cost of 2 washing machines. So America is going to trade from the TV, their 4 TVs. They're going to give up a television. Internally, they would get 2 washing machines. So they are going to trade if you give them more than 2 washing machines. In other words, you give them 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7. So it's anything that's above 1 to 2. Let's have a little look at this, sort of zooming in on this bit again. In other words, you're saying that America will take its 4 televisions, it'll trade 1 with Britain, and so it ends up with 3, that's 1 less than 4. Internally they do it, they could get 2 washing machines, but the gains from trade would be if they could actually sell their televisions and get, let's say, 3 washing machines, so they would go out here, okay? But you need to question then, is that going to be the same for Britain in a minute? So this slide is going to show you here without trade, America starts with its 4 televisions and it moves down their production possibility frontier. This is America's PPF, and so they would give up a television each time and they would gain 2 washing machines, so they would end up with 8. If, however, with trade and being able to trade 1 television for 3 washing machines, then giving up 1 is going to get them up to 12. In other words, they give up 4 and they end up with 12 washing machines. So you can see that what America is going to do is specialize in washing machines. They are producing on their PPF, but the argument's going to be they can consume by trading beyond their PPF. And in other words, this then is going to give them this fact that this moves out is the gains from trade. The fact that their consumption possibility boundary, which is this green line here, is beyond the production possibility, and that's what you've got to say in your analysis. Now, let's see, is that going to work for the UK? Well, here's Britain, remember. The opportunity cost of washing machines was 1/4 of a television. So Britain would trade if they got more than 1/4, and that ratio of 1 to 3 is more than a quarter, it's 0.33. If you don't like it that way, you can just look at it, just zoom in a bit, we're going to look at it from this diagrammatic approach. Britain is going to be producing 32 washing machines. Without trade, they would have to give up 4 in order to gain their 1 television. If they were able to trade with America, and remember America was happy with this, they would give up 3 washing machines to get their 1 television. Okay, so therefore that is going to be the gain from trade, the difference between what they would do internally and the fact that they can consume again beyond their PPF. So looking at the table, we see that without trade, Britain would start with 32 washing machines down here, specializing here. They would give up 4 each time in order to get their televisions, so they'd be moving up their PPF. But with trade, at a ratio of 1 to 3, they could give up 3 washing machines in order to get their 4 televisions. So they end up with 20 washing machines left instead of 16 left if they didn't do trade, if they did it internally. So again, that shows the benefits of trade. And so this is the diagram that you've got to come up with in the exam. So you simply start with a specialization here, and you need to explain that. Then you say America would trade at a ratio of this, 1 to 3, beyond their PPF. That ratio is then parallel to this ratio. So that is the terms of trade ratio. These two lines have to be parallel with each other. That's the 1 to 3 ratio of televisions to washing machines. And you'll show that Britain here would also benefit because they can consume on this dotted line, which is beyond their production possibility. So the argument is, without trade, you can only consume what you produce. In other words, your PPF is the same as your consumption possibility frontier or boundary. Doesn't matter what you call it. Okay, so with trade, the consumption possibility is beyond the production possibility in both countries, and therefore there are more goods and services being able to be consumed, and that is economic growth. That is an increase in living standards. So the full diagram, if you like, is this one here. Okay, I'll just show you, these are called, say, the consumption possibility frontiers, and they show that there's benefits from specializing and trading. Now, this here is the benefit, that's the benefit, the fact that the consumption is beyond the production. Consumption is beyond the production. Why does it kink there? Okay, if you don't do that in the exam, I don't think it actually matters too much. Okay, I would, you could leave it there if you wanted to. The argument is, of course, that when Britain starts with its washing machines, it's giving them up, it's gaining all those televisions, it's now gained all the televisions that America has produced. So if they want more televisions now in Britain, they've got to start to switch their factors internally, and that consumption possibility is then parallel to the production possibility. In other words, they go back at trading 1 to 4. So that is the diagram that you're going to need in the exam. So how are we going to draw? Well, let's have a look. We're going to change this around completely. I've now decided that the countries are going to produce hats and shirts. And what you do is you start with a very large number of shirts down here and quite a flat production possibility frontier. And that's very important that you actually put that as a very flat curve. Then what you have to do is you have to decide, okay, how am I going to put in the PPF for America? So you really got to start, I would say, with a point that is quite high up on that axis, but you don't want that PPF in America to be parallel to this PPF, the UK's PPF, you wanted a very steep line, and the steeper the better. So I'm just going to draw one in for you. There it is. Okay, so the PPF in the US is going to be a lot steeper than the PPF in the UK. Now, why is that important? Because when you say, and we're going to specialize here in America, you're then going to work out the trading ratio, which is between those two opportunity costs. And if you haven't made them diverge a lot against each other, you're going to have trouble with that. So what you do is you start your trading ratio up here somewhere, and you draw it down, and it's going to come down something like that. Then you can move the ruler, take a ruler, move it parallel, okay, and move your trading ratio, or we're going to call that obviously in a minute, consumption possibility boundary, and those two lines are parallel. So this is the consumption possibility boundary in the UK. This is the consumption possibility boundary in the US, and the fact that you can consume at any point here and it's beyond the production possibility, and you can do exactly the same in the UK, here, okay, that is going to show the examiner that you know that there are gains from trade. Britain has specialized down here, okay, put a big S by it, specialize, and then they trade on the green line, and the fact that that means that British consumers can consume beyond their production possibility. In other words, if they didn't trade, they could only consume what they produce. So the consumption is the production without trade. With trade, the consumption is beyond the production. And that's an important point that you've got to come up with really in your analysis. So your analysis simply starts with they have two PPFs, opportunity costs are different, specialize, then you come up with trade in between those two ratios and put in the consumption possibility, and that is showing gains from trade. No numbers, you don't need any maths involved in that, and you just simply need to practice that diagram time and time again. So hopefully that's helpful and clear, and you'll be able to nail that in the exam.